My partner swore his past was behind him, but when his ex showed up pregnant, I learned their goodbye wasn't the end of their story. It was one of those ordinary Tuesday evenings that blend into the rhythm of suburban life, the kind where the dishwasher hums in the background and the kids' homework scatters across the kitchen table like fallen leaves. I'd just gotten home from a long shift at the marketing firm, my laptop bag slung over my shoulder, heels clicking against the hardwood floor we'd refinished together last summer. Mark was in the living room, scrolling through his phone, his tie loosened and that familiar half-smile on his face, as our daughter, Lily, 8 years old and full of boundless energy, practiced her piano scales in the next room. The scent of takeout Chinese lingered from the containers we'd ordered because neither of us had the energy to cook after back-to-back meetings. I remember thinking how stable it all felt, how we'd built this life brick by brick after his messy breakup with Sarah 5 years ago. He'd sworn it was over, that she'd been a chapter closed tight, and I'd believed him because why wouldn't I? Our wedding vows had been etched in that certainty, and Lily's birth had sealed it. But as I poured myself a glass of wine, the doorbell rang, a sharp, insistent chime that sliced through the domestic haze. Mark glanced up, his expression flickering with something I couldn't quite place, and he muttered, "I'll get it," before I could even set the bottle down. In that moment, the air shifted, heavy with an unspoken weight, and I felt a prickle at the back of my neck, the kind that warns you of storms on the horizon. When he opened the door, there she was, Sarah, his ex, standing on our porch under the glow of the motion sensor light, her coat pulled tight around her frame. I froze in the kitchen doorway, wine glass in hand, as fragments of old stories rushed back. The late-night arguments he'd confessed about, the way she'd clung to him even after he'd ended things, the restraining order we'd joked about but never needed. But this Sarah looked different. Older, weary, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun and her hand resting protectively on a swollen belly that screamed the truth before she even spoke. Mark's face drained of color, his shoulders slumping as if the world had just dropped out from under him. "What are you doing here?" he whispered, his voice barely audible over Lily's halting piano notes. Sarah's eyes met mine over his shoulder, a mix of defiance and desperation in them, and she said, "We need to talk, Mark, all of us." The words hung there, thick and unyielding, and I felt my grip tighten on the glass until my knuckles whitened. How dare she show up here, invading our space, our life? But deeper than the anger was a gnawing curiosity laced with dread. What could possibly bring her to our doorstep after all this time? Lily called out from the other room, "Mom, is dinner ready?" And I forced a steady voice to reply, "In a minute, sweetie," while my mind raced through the possibilities, each one darker than the last. We moved to the living room like actors in a play none of us had rehearsed, Sarah lowering herself carefully onto the edge of the couch, Mark pacing near the fireplace, and me standing rigid by the window, arms crossed as if they could shield me from whatever bomb she was about to drop. The rain had started outside, pattering against the panes in a steady rhythm that mocked the chaos unfolding inside. Sarah didn't waste time. She pulled out her phone, swiped to a photo, and held it up. An ultrasound image, grainy and undeniable, with a due date scrawled in the corner. "It's yours, Mark," she said flatly, her voice steady by the tremor in her hands. "We hooked up last year, remember? That conference in Chicago? You said it was a mistake, but mistakes have consequences." Mark stopped pacing, his eyes wide with shock, and he stammered, "Sarah, no, I thought we used protection." But his denial felt hollow, a flimsy barrier against the truth crashing down. I felt the room tilt, my breath coming in shallow bursts as memories flooded in. His business trip last spring, the late nights he'd blamed on jet lag, the way he'd been distant afterward, burying himself in work. Had I missed the signs? Or had I chosen not to see them, too invested in the narrative of our perfect family? Lily peeked in, sensing the tension, and I ushered her back to her room with a promise of ice cream later, my voice cracking just enough to betray me. Inside, guilt twisted like a knife. Guilt for not protecting her from this, for believing Mark's assurances that his past was buried deep. The confrontation escalated in whispers, as if keeping our voices low could contain the damage. Mark sank into the armchair, head in his hands, murmuring apologies that sounded rehearsed, like echoes from their old fights. I swear, it was just once. I was drunk, stressed from the promotion. It meant nothing. But Sarah cut him off, her tone sharp with years of unresolved pain. "Nothing? Tell that to the baby kicking inside me. You ghosted me after, blocked my number, pretended it never happened." I watched them, these two people who'd once shared a life before mine, their history unfolding like a tainted tapestry I hadn't fully seen. Anger surged through me, hot and unrelenting. Anger at Mark for betraying us, at Sarah for dropping this grenade into our home, at myself for the blind trust I'd worn like armor. How could he? We'd been through therapy after his confession about their lingering texts early in our relationship. He'd promised transparency, handed over his phone passwords, vowed to build walls against temptation. Yet here we were, the past not just knocking, but barging in, pregnant with proof of his lies. Tears burned my eyes, but I blinked them back, refusing to crumble in front of her. The clock on the mantel ticked mercilessly, marking the seconds as our family teetered on the edge of fracture. Outside, the rain intensified, mirroring the storm raging in my chest, and I wondered if we'd ever find shelter again. As Sarah laid out the details, the positive test, the doctor's visits, her decision to keep the baby despite everything, I felt a chasm open inside me, swallowing the woman I'd been just hours ago. Mark reached for my hand, but I pulled away, the touch feeling like betrayal incarnate. "How long have you known?" I asked him, my voice low and accusatory, and he admitted it'd been a month since she'd messaged him on a burner app he'd forgotten to delete. A month of silence, of him carrying the secret while we planned Lily's birthday party, while we made love in our bed, while he kissed me goodnight. The rawness of it hit me like a wave, grief mingling with fury until I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. Sarah watched us, her expression softening just a fraction, perhaps seeing the mirror of her own past pain in my eyes. She said, "I didn't come to ruin your life, but this child deserves a father, and I can't do it alone." Her words pierced me, forcing me to confront the innocent life caught in the crossfire, a half-sibling to Lily that would forever alter our world. I excused myself to the kitchen, splashing water on my face, staring at my reflection in the darkened window, pale, haunted, a stranger to myself. The fallout was just beginning, a seismic shift that would ripple through every corner of our existence, and in that moment, all I could feel was the profound, aching loss of the trust I'd held so dear. The night dragged on, Sarah eventually leaving with a promise or threat to follow up soon, her taillights disappearing into the rainy haze. Mark and I sat in silence, the space between us vast and unbridgeable. Lily finally asleep upstairs, oblivious to the wreckage below. He tried to explain again, his voice breaking with remorse, but each word only deepened the wound. "I love you, Emma. This doesn't change anything." But it changed everything. The foundation of our marriage cracked, exposing the lies beneath. I retreated to the guest room, the bed cold and unfamiliar, my mind replaying the scene in loops, her belly, his shock, my shattering heart. Sleep evaded me, replaced by a torrent of what-ifs and whys, the grief settling in like fog over a familiar landscape now rendered alien. As dawn crept in, gray and unrelenting, I clutched my phone, debating whether to call my sister or a lawyer, the raw emotional fallout clinging to me like a second skin. This was the start of unraveling, and I wasn't sure we'd ever weave ourselves back together. The house felt different after Sarah left, as though the walls themselves had absorbed the shock and now exhaled it back at us in slow, heavy breaths. Mark stayed downstairs while I sat on the edge of Lily's bed, watching her sleep, her small chest rising and falling under the quilt patterned with tiny stars, one hand curled near her cheek. I smoothed the blanket over her shoulder, even though it was already perfect, needing something ordinary to anchor me. Downstairs, the dishwasher had finished its cycle and fallen silent. The only sound left was the faint drip of the kitchen faucet we'd been meaning to fix for months. I didn't want to go back to him yet. The guest room still waited, sheets untouched since I'd made the bed last spring when my mother visited, but I couldn't bring myself to close the door on our bedroom either. So I lingered in the hallway, arms wrapped around my middle, listening to the creak of the floorboards as Mark moved below me, restless, probably replaying every second of the evening the way I was. Eventually, I went down. He was sitting at the kitchen island, elbows on the granite, staring at the empty wine glass I'd abandoned earlier. The overhead light cast harsh shadows under his eyes. He looked older than 41, older than the man who'd carried Lily on his shoulders at the county fair last summer and laughed when cotton candy stuck to his beard. When he heard my footsteps, he lifted his head, but he didn't speak right away. Neither did I. I pulled out the stool across from him, sat, and folded my hands in my lap like I was waiting for a verdict. The silence stretched until it felt like another presence in the room. "I didn't know she was pregnant," he said finally, voice rough. "She texted me a month ago, said we needed to talk. I thought it was about money or closure or I don't know. I told her to leave me alone. Then nothing, until tonight." He rubbed his face with both hands. "I should have told you the moment the message came through. I know that." "You should have," I said. The words came out flat, without the heat I'd expected. Maybe the anger had burned through its first furious layer and left only ash. "A month, Mark. A whole month of you knowing she was reaching out, knowing there was unfinished business, and you chose to carry it alone. Again." He winced. "I was trying to protect you, protect us. By lying. By not dumping more chaos on you when things were finally good." His voice cracked on the last word. "Work has been brutal, Lily's school stuff, your promotion. I thought if I handled it quietly..." "You thought if you handled it quietly, it would disappear." I leaned forward. "That's what you always do. You think silence is kindness. It isn't. It's control." He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw the guilt swim up behind his eyes, raw and unguarded. For a second, I almost reached for him, the old reflex of comfort kicking in before my brain could stop it. I curled my fingers into my palms instead. We didn't raise our voices, maybe because Lily was asleep upstairs, maybe because we were both too exhausted, or maybe because we'd already screamed everything we needed to in the first hour after Sarah left. What remained was quieter, more precise, each sentence landing like a small, deliberate cut. He told me about Chicago again. Not the version he'd given me last year. Boring conference, too much whiskey, bad decisions. But the fuller one. How Sarah had been there for a client meeting, how they'd run into each other in the hotel bar, how one drink became three, how the old chemistry flared before either of them could remember why it had burned them before. It was stupid. It was weak. And I hated myself the second it was over. I came home and swore I'd never let anything like that touch us again. Except it did. It's touching us right now. He nodded, slow, like the motion cost him something. I know. I asked the question I'd been avoiding since the porch light first illuminated her face. Do you still feel anything for her? He didn't answer immediately. That pause told me more than words ever could. When he spoke, his voice was very low. Not the way I feel for you, not even close, but there's history, regret, guilt. I thought cutting contact would erase it. Clearly, I was wrong. I let that sit between us. The faucet dripped again, plink, plink, and I made a mental note to call the plumber tomorrow because if our marriage was going to collapse, at least the sink shouldn't be leaking while it happened. After a while, I stood up. I'm sleeping in the guest room tonight. He didn't argue. Okay. I need space to think. I know. I paused at the foot of the stairs. Don't come up, don't knock, don't text me goodnight. Just let me breathe. He nodded, eyes fixed on the countertop. I love you, Emma. The words landed soft, almost hopeful. I didn't say them back. Not because I didn't feel them anymore, I still did, God help me, but because saying them right then would have felt like permission, and I wasn't ready to give any. Upstairs, I closed the guest room door with a quiet click and leaned against the door, listening to the house settle around me. The rain had stopped. Now there was only the low hum of the refrigerator downstairs and the occasional creak of the old timbers cooling. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I sat on the edge of the bed and opened my phone, scrolling through photos of the three of us. Lily's kindergarten graduation, Mark kissing my temple on our anniversary, the weekend we drove to the coast and let Lily build sandcastles until the tide took them. Each image felt like evidence from another life. I kept scrolling until the battery warning flashed, then set the phone face down on the nightstand. I lay back fully clothed, staring at the ceiling fan that spun lazy circles even though the room was cold. My mind kept returning to Sarah's hand on her belly, the way she'd looked at Mark, not with love exactly, but with a kind of exhausted claim. And I kept returning to Mark's face when he opened the door, the split-second recognition before the panic set in. That flicker contained everything: memory, dread, shame, and something else I couldn't name. Ownership, maybe. Not of her, but of the mistake. He'd carried it so carefully that it had grown in the dark. Sleep came in fragments, sharp dreams of locked doors and empty cribs and Lily asking why Daddy was crying. Each time I woke, the clock on the nightstand glowed a little later, 1:47, 3:12, 4:39. By 5, I gave up and went to the window, pulling the curtain aside to watch the sky lighten from charcoal to slate. The neighborhood was still asleep, porch lights winking out one by one as dawn crept in. Somewhere, a dog barked, then quieted. Ordinary life continuing, indifferent. Down the hall, our bedroom door was still closed. I pictured Mark lying on his side of the bed, probably wide awake too, staring at the empty space where I should have been. Part of me wanted to go to him, to crawl under the covers and let him hold me until the hurt dulled. The larger part, the part that had listened to his careful half-truths for a month, kept me rooted where I was. I didn't know what came next. I only knew the first full night of truth had stripped us down to the bone, and whatever we built from here would have to be made of something stronger than hope or habit. Something closer to honesty, however brutal. For now, though, I stayed in the guest room with its unfamiliar pillows and its view of the street I'd lived on for 9 years. I stayed, and I breathed, and I waited for morning to decide what kind of courage I had left. Morning arrived without fanfare, the same gray light filtering through the blinds in the guest room, turning the white duvet a dull silver. I hadn't slept more than an hour or two in snatches, but the body has its own stubborn momentum. It rose, showered, dressed in yesterday's jeans and a soft sweater that still smelled faintly of Mark's laundry detergent. Routine was the only scaffolding I had left. Downstairs, Lily was already at the kitchen table, spooning cereal into her mouth while scrolling cartoons on the iPad we'd sworn we'd limit to weekends. She looked up when I came in, her dark curls still sleep-tangled. "Why were you in the blue room?" she asked, matter-of-fact, as though she'd been cataloging my movements all night. I poured coffee into my favorite mug, the one with the chipped handle we'd bought on our honeymoon, and bought time with a sip. Daddy and I needed to talk late, so I let him have the big bed. The lie tasted metallic. She accepted it with the easy trust of 8, nodded, and returned to her screen. Mark appeared then, hair damp from his own shower, wearing the navy polo he usually saved for parent-teacher conferences. Our eyes met over Lily's head. His were red-rimmed, mine probably the same. He offered a small, careful smile. I didn't return it, but I didn't look away either. That felt like progress. We moved through the morning on autopilot. Lily's backpack, her lunch, turkey on whole wheat, apple slices, the yogurt she liked only if the foil lid was peeled back exactly right, the permission slip for the aquarium field trip I'd forgotten to sign. Mark packed her snack while I braided her hair. Our hands brushed once over the counter, and we both flinched, then pretended it hadn't happened. When the school bus horn sounded outside, Lily hugged us both, first me, then him, and ran down the driveway with her coat flapping. The door closed behind her, and the house exhaled, suddenly too quiet. Mark leaned against the sink. We have to tell her something eventually. Not today, I said. She has a spelling test and art club after school. Let her have one normal Wednesday. He nodded, but the agreement felt fragile, like we were both aware how quickly normal could evaporate. I called in sick to work, first time in 2 years, and Mark did the same. We didn't discuss it, we just did it, the way we used to cancel plans when one of us had the flu. Except this wasn't a virus. This was a fracture running straight through the foundation. We sat at opposite ends of the living room couch with our untouched coffees cooling on the side tables. The space between us measured 3 cushions and 5 years of promises now in question. I need to know what you want, I said. My voice sounded thin, like it belonged to someone else. Not what you think I want to hear, what you actually want. He looked at his hands, those familiar hands that had once held mine through labor, that had planted the hydrangeas by the front steps, that had touched another woman's body last spring. I want our family, he said. I want Lily to grow up with both of us under the same roof. I want you to look at me the way you did before I opened that door last night. That version of me doesn't exist anymore. I know, he swallowed, but maybe a new version could, eventually? I let the words settle. They weren't enough, but they weren't nothing. The rest of the morning passed in practicalities, the only language we could speak without bleeding. We agreed on ground rules, the way people negotiate after a natural disaster. No more secrets, phone passcodes shared again, though the trust in that gesture felt performative now. No contact with Sarah unless I was copied on every message. He showed me the burner app he'd used, a nondescript chat window with only 3 exchanges from her. The first announcing the pregnancy, the second asking why he'd blocked her number, the third a simple, I'm keeping it. His replies were curt, almost cold. This is not the time, and then silence. I read them twice, searching for subtext, for tenderness he might have hidden even from himself. I found none, but the absence didn't comfort me. It only proved how efficiently he could compartmentalize. We decided Lily would stay oblivious for now. No half-sibling bombshell dropped between spelling words and recess, but we also agreed she deserved protection from the tension leaking into every room. No more sleeping in separate beds where she could notice. We'll share the marital one, but with a clear boundary. Pillows down the middle if necessary, like children playing at forts. The image was absurd and heartbreaking in equal measure. Around noon, my phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. I showed Mark before opening it. Can we talk? Not at your house, neutral ground. I need to know what you both plan to do about the baby. My thumb hovered over the reply button. Mark watched me, waiting. Tell her we'll meet her Saturday. Coffee shop on Elm, public, no surprises. He exhaled, relieved I'd taken the lead. I typed the message, hit send, then turned the phone face down. The small action felt like reclaiming something. The afternoon stretched long and strange. We cleaned the kitchen in silence, wiped counters that were already clean, organized the pantry by expiration date. Domestic tasks became a kind of truce. At 3:30, the bus dropped Lily off. She burst in, talking about a new girl in class who could draw dragons that looked real. We listened, nodded, asked the right questions. For 40 minutes, we were a family again. The performance flawless. When she ran upstairs to change for soccer practice, the mask slipped. Mark leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. She can't know yet, he whispered. Not until we're sure what yet even looks like. I nodded. Protecting her was the one thing we still agreed on without hesitation. Soccer practice gave us another hour apart. I sat in the bleachers with the other parents, nodding at small talk about snack rotations and uniform laundry, while my mind circled the same questions. How much damage had already been done? Could we contain it? Would Lily sense the shift even if we never said the words? When Mark arrived late, traffic, he said, he sat 1 row behind me, close enough to be present, far enough to respect the space I'd asked for. I felt his gaze on my back like a physical touch, steady and sorry. After practice, we drove home separately, another unspoken rule forming, and made dinner together because Lily expected tacos on Wednesdays. She chattered through the meal about everything and nothing. We answered, smiled, passed the salsa. When she asked why we were being so quiet, I said, just tired, baby. And she accepted it because children believe their parents when the lie is gentle. Bedtime routine unfolded like always. Bath, pajamas, 2 chapters of the fantasy book about the girl who talks to stars. Mark read tonight, his voice low and steady. I listened from the doorway, arms folded, watching the lamplight catch in Lily's eyelashes as they fluttered toward sleep. When he kissed her forehead and turned off the light, we stepped into the hall together. The door clicked shut behind us. We stood there, in the dim corridor, 2 people who once finished each other's sentences, now searching for any sentence at all. I'm going to sleep on the couch, he said. No, I answered. We agreed. We share the bed. We just don't touch. He searched my face. You sure? I'm not sure of anything, I said, but Lily notices things. She'll notice separate beds before she notices anything else. So we went into our room, changed in the bathroom like shy teenagers, and climbed in on opposite sides. The pillow barrier stayed in place, 2 king pillows stacked lengthwise down the middle like a demilitarized zone. We lay on our backs, staring at the same ceiling we'd stared at for years, now foreign territory. Good night, Emma, he whispered. Good night, I answered. Neither of us said, I love you. The words felt too big, too soon, too fragile to survive the air between us. I listened to his breathing slow and deepen long before mine did. Outside, a car passed, headlights sweeping the wall in a brief arc of gold. I turned my head toward him in the dark, studying the outline of his shoulder, the familiar curve of his ear. Grief sat heavy in my chest. Not just for the betrayal, but for the man I thought he was, the marriage I believed was stronger than temptation. Yet, here we are, still side by side, still trying. That counted for something. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a willingness to stay in the same room, breathing the same air, while the truth did its slow, painful work. Tomorrow we would face Sarah again. Tomorrow we would decide what protecting our family really meant. For tonight, though, we lay divided by pillows and history, two wounded people refusing to leave the battlefield. It wasn't closeness, it was endurance. And for now, that was enough. Saturday morning felt like walking into a courtroom where the verdict had already been whispered, but not yet spoken aloud. I woke before the alarm, the pillow barrier still intact between us, though sometime in the night Mark had turned toward me in his sleep, one arm stretched across the divide as if reaching for familiar ground. I studied his face in the pale light, lines deeper around his eyes, the faint gray at his temples more noticeable now, and felt a confusing mix of tenderness and resentment. I slipped out of bed without waking him, dressed quietly, and went downstairs to make coffee the way I liked it, strong, black, no sugar. The ritual steadied my hands. Lily was at her best friend's house for a birthday sleepover. The house belonged to the silence and to whatever conversation waited at the coffee shop on Elm. Mark came down 20 minutes later, hair still mussed, wearing the gray hoodie he'd had since college. He accepted the mug I handed him without comment. We drank standing at the counter, not quite looking at each other. You ready? He asked eventually. No, I said, but we're going anyway. The drive was short, 10 minutes through quiet streets lined with brick colonials and leafless maples. Neither of us turned on the radio. The wipers swept away a light mist that had settled overnight. The world looked scrubbed clean, indifferent. When we pulled into the parking lot behind Brew and Bean, Sarah's car was already there, a silver SUV I didn't recognize, probably new since the last time any of us had crossed paths. My stomach knotted. Mark reached for my hand on the gearshift. I let him hold it for 3 seconds before pulling away. Not cruelty, just self-preservation. Inside, the place smelled of espresso and cinnamon, Saturday brunch crowd. Young families with strollers, a few lone laptop users, the low murmur of conversation. Sarah sat at a corner table near the window, back to the door, one hand resting on the small swell of her belly. She wore a navy sweater and jeans, hair in a low ponytail. When she saw us, she stood, awkward, like someone who'd rehearsed this moment too many times. We approached without smiles. Mark pulled out my chair first, small courtesy, automatic, then sat beside me. Sarah lowered herself carefully, hands folded on the table. Thank you for coming, she said. Her voice was softer than on our porch, less certain. I nodded once. Mark cleared his throat. We're here to listen. She looked between us, eyes lingering on me a beat longer. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not even asking for a relationship, romantic or otherwise. I'm asking for clarity so I can plan. This baby is due in May. I need to know if you want to be involved, Mark, and if so, how much. And I need to know what that means for your family. The word family landed like a stone in still water. I felt the ripples move through me. Mark spoke first. I want to do right by the child. That means financial support, obviously, and I want to know him or her. But I won't pretend this doesn't change everything at home. He glanced at me. Emma and I are figuring out what our marriage looks like now. We're not separating, not yet, but trust is damaged. Sarah nodded slowly. I get that. I'm not trying to break anything. She paused, eyes dropping to her coffee. I've been doing this alone for months. Doctor appointments, telling my parents, explaining to my boss why I need maternity leave earlier than planned. It's exhausting. I thought about not telling you at all, but that didn't feel fair to the baby, or to you. I listened to her and felt something shift. Not softening exactly, but widening. She wasn't the villain I'd painted in the dark hours of the week. She was tired, scared, carrying a life that tied her to a man who had walked away already once. I hated that I understood her. What do you need from us right now? I asked. My voice surprised me. Steady, almost calm. She exhaled. A paternity test, eventually. Not because I doubt it, but because courts like paper trails. And a conversation about what involvement looks like after the birth. Visitation, holidays, school events. I don't want to fight. I just want to know the rules so I can stop guessing. Mark rubbed the back of his neck. We can do the test, soon, and we'll figure out the rest together. Lawyers if we have to, so it's clear and fair. I added, but nothing happens without transparency. No more private messages, no side conversations. Everything goes through both of us. Sarah met my eyes. Agreed. We sat with that for a moment. the three of us bound by a future none of us had chosen. The barista called out an order for oat milk lattes. A toddler at the next table laughed too loud. Ordinary life continuing around our extraordinary wreckage. After a while, Sarah stood. I should go. I have a prenatal class in an hour. She hesitated, then looked at me directly. I'm sorry this landed on your doorstep, Emma. I know what it feels like to be the one left holding the pieces. I didn't say it was okay, because it wasn't, but I nodded. Take care of yourself, I said, and I meant it. She left first. Mark and I stayed another 10 minutes, finishing coffee that had gone cold. When we finally walked out, the mist had lifted into weak sunlight. We didn't speak until we were back in the car. That went better than I expected, he said quietly. It went. That's something. We drove home the long way, past the park where Lily used to feed ducks, past the elementary school with its faded mural of smiling planets. Neither of us suggested stopping. When we pulled into the driveway, Mark turned off the engine but didn't move to get out. I'm going to start looking for a therapist. Individual first, then maybe couples, if you're willing. I looked at the house, our house, still standing despite everything. I already have an appointment, I told him. Monday at 10, virtual. I booked it Thursday night. He exhaled, a sound that might have been relief or surrender. Good. We went inside. The quiet felt different now, not oppressive, but expectant. I made tea while Mark unloaded the dishwasher. Small domestic motions, not reconciliation, but coexistence. When Lily texted that she was having fun and would be home by 4, I showed him the message. He smiled, the first real one in days, and I let myself feel the tiniest thaw in my chest. Later, while Lily napped on the couch after her sleepover high wore off, I took my laptop to the sunroom and opened a blank document. I titled it, Boundaries. Then I started typing. No unilateral decisions about the baby without discussion. All communication with Sarah copied to both of us. Therapy, individual, and eventually joint. Full phone access reinstated, no deletions. Weekly check-ins, just us, no distractions. Lily protected above all else. No details until we're solid. I printed 2 copies. When Mark came in with fresh coffee, I handed him one. He read it slowly, then took the pen I offered and added a 7th. We tell each other the hard truths even when it hurts. He signed his name beneath mine. I signed below his. We didn't hug. We didn't kiss. We simply folded the pages and put them in the kitchen drawer where we kept the takeout menus and spare keys, the everyday place for important things. Outside, the afternoon light slanted through the windows, catching dust motes in slow motion. Lily stirred on the couch, murmured something about dragons, then settled again. Mark and I stood in the doorway watching her, 2 people who had once believed love was enough, now learning it might need scaffolding instead. I didn't know if the scaffolding would hold, but for the first time since the doorbell rang, I believed we might try to build it together. That was enough for today. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp February light that makes everything look sharper than it feels. I woke at 6:30 to the alarm I'd set the night before, the one that played soft piano notes instead of the jarring buzz we used to use. Mark was already up. I heard the coffee grinder whirring downstairs, a sound that once meant comfort and now carried a faint edge of uncertainty. I dressed in the dim bedroom, soft gray leggings, an oversized cardigan, hair pulled into a loose knot, then slipped downstairs without turning on any lights beyond the kitchen pendant. Lily was still asleep. Her bus didn't come until 8:20. We had time. Mark handed me a mug without asking if I wanted one. Black, 2 sugars, the way I took it when my head was full. You nervous? He asked. Mostly tired of feeling like I'm carrying a brick in my chest, I said. But yes, a little. He nodded, didn't push. That was new, him not trying to fill the silence with reassurance. I appreciated it more than I could say. At 10 o'clock sharp, I closed myself in the sunroom, laptop open on the wicker table, noise-canceling headphones on. The virtual waiting room showed a soft blue background and the therapist's name, Dr. Elena Marquez. When her face appeared, warm brown eyes, silver-streaked hair pulled back, she smiled the practiced, non-intrusive smile of someone who has heard worse and still believes people can change. Emma, welcome. I'm glad you're here. I managed a small laugh. I'm not sure glad is the word, but I'm here. We started slow. She asked what brought me, and I gave her the condensed version. Husband's one-night mistake with an ex, pregnancy discovered 5 days ago, front porch confrontation, ground rules scribbled on printer paper now tucked in the kitchen drawer. I spoke without much inflection, as though reciting someone else's story. When she finished, she asked the only question that mattered. How are you holding up, really? The answer surprised me. I'm angry, I said, but not the explosive kind. It's quieter, like background noise that never stops. And underneath that is grief. For the version of us I thought we had, for the trust I gave without questioning, for the future I pictured that now has this permanent asterisk. She nodded, letting the words settle. Grief makes sense. Betrayal always involves loss, even if the person is still right there. We talked about the mechanics first. Sleep, fitful. Appetite, minimal. how I'd started walking the neighborhood loop at dusk just to move the restlessness out of my body. Then she asked about Mark. He's trying, I said. He's not defensive, he's not minimizing. He's just there, waiting for me to decide how much space he gets. It's exhausting to be the one holding the measuring tape. And what do you want from him right now? I looked out the window at the bare branches scratching the sky. I want to believe him when he says it was a mistake and not a pattern. I want to stop scanning his face for lies. I want to feel safe in my own house again. But mostly, I want to stop feeling like I'm failing Lily by letting this happen under our roof. Dr. Marquez tilted her head. You're not failing her by having hard things happen. You're modeling what it looks like to face them instead of running. The words landed softly, like a hand on my shoulder. I hadn't realized how much I needed someone to say them. We spent the last 20 minutes on small, concrete things. Breathing exercises when the anger spiked, journal prompts to separate what was his to carry from what was mine, permission to grieve the old marriage while still deciding about the new one. When the session ended, she asked if I wanted to book again. Same time next week, I said, without hesitation. After I closed the laptop, I sat there a long minute, staring at the blank screen. My reflection looked back, pale, tired, but not shattered. Progress, maybe. Downstairs, Mark had taken Lily to school drop-off and then to the hardware store for the faucet parts we'd been ignoring. He was under the sink when I came in, tools spread across a towel. He glanced up, wiping his hands on his jeans. How'd it go? I leaned against the doorframe. It was good. Hard, but good. She didn't tell me to leave you or stay, just helped me name what I'm carrying. He nodded, set the winch down. I'm glad. I watched him work for a minute, the careful way he wrapped the new cartridge, the focus that had always drawn to me. I'm going to keep going, weekly, and I think you should start too. Not couples yet, just you. Figure out why silence still feels safer than speaking. He sat back on his heels, met my eyes. I already called someone. Thursday, at 3, in person, downtown. Guy named Dr. Patel. Comes recommended. The surprise moved through me like warm water. You didn't tell me. I wanted to do it first, prove I wasn't just saying the right things. I exhaled. Thank you. We didn't hug. We didn't need to. The small admission felt like a door cracking open, letting in a sliver of air. The rest of the day unfolded in ordinary pieces. I answered work emails from the kitchen table while Lily practiced piano after school. Mark cooked dinner, pasta with the sauce he makes when he's trying to say sorry without words. Garlic, tomatoes, a pinch of chili flake. We ate together at the table, Lily between us, telling a long story about a playground argument over who got to be goalie. We listened, asked questions, laughed at the right moments. After she went upstairs to shower, Mark cleared the plates while I loaded the dishwasher. Our movements were careful, not tense. Later, when the house was quiet, I sat on the couch with my journal. Dr. Marquez had suggested starting with 1 sentence a day. I wrote, Today I felt the first tiny shift from surviving to deciding. I closed the notebook, set it on the side table. Mark came in from checking the locks, hesitated, then sat on the far end of the couch. Not too close, not too far. I'm proud of you, he said quietly, for going today, for not shutting down. I looked at him, really looked. I'm proud of you for booking someone too. We let that sit. No grand declarations, no tears, just 2 people acknowledging that the work had started, small and unglamorous and necessary. When we went upstairs, we kept the pillow barrier, but I moved one of the pillows aside so our heads were closer on the shared pillow. Not touching, just nearer. He noticed. I saw the flicker in his eyes. Neither of us commented. I fell asleep listening to his breathing, steady and even, the same rhythm I'd known for 12 years. It didn't erase the hurt. It didn't promise anything permanent, but it reminded us that we were still here, still breathing the same air, still choosing, in this moment, to stay. The next morning, I woke before him, slipped downstairs, made coffee for 2. When he came down, I handed him his mug. Our fingers brushed. This time, neither of us flinched. Small vulnerability shifts, I thought. 1 breath at a time. The first joint session felt like stepping onto a frozen pond, testing each step to see if the ice would hold or crack wide open. We chose a Thursday evening in late February, after Lily's bedtime, when the house was quiet except for the low hum of the furnace kicking on against the chill. Dr. Patel's office was on the 3rd floor of a nondescript building downtown. Neutral beige walls, abstract prints that looked like they were meant to soothe without committing to any emotion. We sat in the waiting room on separate chairs, magazines untouched between us, until the receptionist called our names. Mark let me walk in first. Small gesture, I noticed. Dr. Patel was in his late 50s, salt and pepper hair, calm eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He greeted us without excessive warmth, which I appreciated. No forced cheer, just quiet competence. He gestured to the love seat across from his armchair. We sat with a careful foot of space between us, like strangers sharing a bus bench. He started with logistics. Confidentiality, no recording. The goal was understanding, not assigning blame. Then he asked the simplest, hardest question. What brings you here together tonight? Mark looked at me, deferring. I took a breath that felt too shallow. 5 weeks ago, my husband's ex showed up at our door, pregnant. The baby is his, from a one-night mistake during a work trip last year. He didn't tell me when she first reached out. He kept it secret for a month. We're trying to decide if our marriage can survive that. The words came out even, almost clinical. I'd rehearsed them in my head during the drive over, but saying them aloud in this room still felt like peeling off a scab. Dr. Patel nodded slowly. Thank you for the clarity, Emma. Mark? Mark's hands rested on his knees, fingers laced tight. I betrayed her trust, not just with the act, but with the silence afterward. I thought I was protecting her, us, from more pain. I was wrong. I want to understand why I keep choosing distance when closeness is what I actually want. The doctor let the silence sit for a moment, then asked, "What does closeness mean to each of you right now?" I answered first because the question felt aimed at me. It means feeling safe enough to stop bracing for the next secret. It means believing his remorse is deeper than guilt, that it's regret for hurting me, not just regret for getting caught. Right now, I can see he's sorry, but I can't feel it all the way through. There's still a wall. Mark turned toward me slightly. For me, closeness would mean you looking at me without that flicker of doubt in your eyes. I hate that I put it there. I hate that every time I reach for you, I wonder if you're only letting me because of Lily, or habit, or fear of change. Dr. Patel leaned forward. Let's name the core wounds. Emma, when you think about the month of silence, what hurts most? I closed my eyes for a second, letting the memory surface without flinching. It's not the sex. I mean, it hurts, but I can almost understand how loneliness and old chemistry and too much whiskey could lead to one bad night. What cuts deepest is that he chose to carry the aftermath alone. He decided, for both of us, that I couldn't handle the truth, that my pain would be too much for him to witness. That made me feel small, invisible, like I was the one person he couldn't trust with his mess. Mark's face crumpled just for a second before he steadied it. When he spoke, his voice was rough. I told myself I was sparing you, but the truth is, I was sparing myself. Facing you with that news meant facing how far I'd fallen from the man I promised to be. I was ashamed, and instead of letting the shame push me toward honesty, I let it push me into hiding. Again, like I did with the small things early on. Late nights at the office I didn't explain, texts I deleted before you could see. I thought I'd outgrown that pattern. I hadn't. Dr. Patel wrote something brief on his notepad. Shame is a powerful isolator. It convinces us that connection will only bring more pain, but hiding the shame usually creates exactly the pain we're trying to avoid. He looked between us. Can either of you name a moment, recent or past, when honesty felt risky but actually brought you closer? I thought back. After Lily was born, I had terrible postpartum anxiety. Couldn't sleep, kept checking her breathing every 10 minutes. I didn't tell Mark how bad it was because I didn't want him to think I wasn't grateful or that I was failing as a mother. One night I broke down in the nursery at 3 a.m. He found me crying on the floor. I told him everything, the fear, the guilt, how I sometimes thought she'd be better off without me. He didn't fix it, he just sat with me, held me. The next day, he called my OB, made the appointment for therapy, and stayed home from work for a week. That honesty didn't break us, it glued something back together. Mark nodded slowly. I remember that night. I was terrified, but hearing you say it out loud made me feel needed, not useless, like I could actually help instead of just standing there helpless. The doctor let that memory breathe for a moment. So there's evidence in your history that vulnerability, even when it's ugly, can lead to repair rather than rupture. What would it look like to practice that now with this larger wound? I looked at Mark. I need you to tell me the things you're afraid I'll hate you for, even if they're small, even if they make me angry. I'd rather feel the anger and know the full truth than feel the quiet suspicion that something's still hidden. He swallowed. And I need you to tell me when you're pulling away, not just physically, but emotionally, when you're in the room but not really here, because the silence from you scares me more than your anger does. The doctor smiled faintly, the first real one. That's a start. Mutual requests for transparency, not guarantees, but invitations. We spent the last 15 minutes mapping out one small experiment. Every evening after Lily's asleep, 10 minutes of truth time. No phones, no distractions. One person speaks, the other listens without interrupting. Then switch. The only rule, no fixing, no defending, just hearing. We could bring anything, a resentment from the day, a fear about the baby, a memory that hurt. The goal wasn't resolution, it was practice in staying present with discomfort. When the hour ended, we stood. Dr. Patel shook our hands. You're doing hard work. Keep showing up. In the elevator down, Mark and I stood side by side, not touching, but closer than we'd stood in weeks. Outside, the air was cold, sharp with the promise of spring still far away. We walked to the car slowly. That was harder than I thought, he said. And better, I added. In the car, he started the engine but didn't pull out yet. Emma, thank you for not walking away before we tried this. I looked at the dashboard lights, the way they glowed soft against the dark. I'm not promising forever, but I'm here tonight. That's what I can give right now. He nodded. That's enough. We drove home through quiet streets, the radio off, the only sound the tires on wet pavement. When we stepped inside, the house smelled like the lavender candle Lily liked to burn during homework. Upstairs, Lily was asleep, one arm thrown over the edge of the bed, stuffed dragon tucked under her chin. We changed in silence, climbed into bed. The pillow barrier was gone. Neither of us had rebuilt it after the last session. I turned to my side, facing him. He mirrored me. Our knees almost touched. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel the urge to turn away. We didn't speak. We just lay there, breathing in the same rhythm, letting the quiet hold what words couldn't carry yet. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't healed. But it was the beginning of naming the wounds out loud, and discovering they didn't kill us when we did. By mid-April, the air had softened, carrying the faint green scent of new leaves and the promise that winter's grip was finally loosening. We decided, after 3 more joint sessions with Dr. Patel and a long, quiet conversation on the back porch one Sunday afternoon, to take Lily away for a weekend. Not a grand vacation, nothing that would feel like running from the mess still settling at home. Just a small cabin rental 2 hours north, on the edge of a state park lake we'd visited once when Lily was 4. The place had a wood-burning stove, a screened porch overlooking the water, and no cell service except in the parking lot near the road. We booked it for the last weekend before Sarah's due date loomed closer, telling ourselves the timing was coincidental. It wasn't. We both needed a pocket of time where the baby wasn't yet real enough to dominate every thought. Lily was ecstatic when we told her. She packed her own bag, stuffed dragon, sketchbook, 3 mismatched socks she swore were lucky, and spent the drive pointing out every hawk and budding dogwood along the highway. Mark drove, one hand on the wheel, the other resting open on the console between us. I didn't take it, but I didn't move my own hand away either. Progress measured in inches. The cabin smelled of pine and old cedar when we unlocked the door. Lily ran straight through to the porch, yelling that she could see fish jumping. Mark carried in the cooler while I unpacked groceries. Eggs, bread, coffee, the makings of s'mores because Lily had begged. We moved around each other with the ease of long habit, but underneath was a new awareness. Every glance, every brush of shoulders felt deliberate, chosen. No one was pretending the fracture had vanished. We were simply choosing, moment by moment, not to widen it. That first evening, we walked the short trail to the lake's edge. Lily skipped ahead, collecting smooth stones for her treasure pile. Mark and I followed at a slower pace. The path was narrow, our arms touched now and then. Neither of us pulled back. I keep thinking about the paternity test results, he said quietly. They came back last week. 100% match. I knew they would, but seeing it on paper, it made everything heavier. I nodded. I read the report too. Twice. I wanted to find some loophole, some mistake. There wasn't one. He stopped walking. Does knowing change how you see me? I looked out at the water, flat and silver in the late light. It changes how I see the future. There's a child who will exist because of you and Sarah. That child will be part of our orbit, whether we like it or not. Lily will have a half-sibling. Holidays will look different. School events, birthdays, there'll be overlap. I'm grieving the simplicity we used to have. But seeing the truth on paper also means we're not living in maybe anymore. We're living in what is. And that's freeing in a brutal way. He exhaled, long and slow. I hate that I took that simplicity from you. I know, but hating you doesn't bring it back. Lily called from up ahead, Mom, Dad, come see this frog, and we started walking again. The moment passed without resolution, but it didn't feel unfinished, just spoken. Dinner was hamburgers on the grill outside, the smoke curling up into the dusk. Lily ate too, ketchup smeared on her cheek, then ran off to chase fireflies with a jar we'd brought from home. Mark and I stayed at the picnic table, watching her silhouette dart across the grass. The sky deepened from peach to indigo. Crickets started their chorus. She's happy, he said. She is, I agreed. She doesn't know why we've been quieter lately, but she knows we're still us. Mark reached across the table, palm up. I studied his hand. The faint scar from the time he sliced his thumb carving Halloween pumpkins, the callus on his ring finger from years of wearing his wedding band. I placed my hand in his. Not forgiveness exactly, more like acknowledgement. We were still connected, even through the scar tissue. Later, after Lily was asleep in the loft bed upstairs, dragon tucked under her arm, exhausted from fresh air and fireflies, we sat on the screened porch with mugs of chamomile. The lake lapped softly against the dock, moths batted against the bulb overhead. Mark spoke first. I've been thinking about what Dr. Patel said about shame keeping us separate. I've spent so long hiding pieces of myself because I didn't want you to see the parts that aren't good, the weak parts, the selfish ones. But hiding them didn't make them disappear. It just gave them room to grow in the dark. I turned my mug in my hands. I've been doing the same thing, not telling you how scared I am that one day I'll wake up and still feel this distance between us, not admitting that sometimes I look at you and see the man who chose silence over me, and it hurts all over again. I've been afraid saying it out loud would make it permanent. He looked at me steadily. Say it anyway. So I did. I'm terrified we'll never get back to feeling easy with each other, that every time the baby's mentioned or Sarah texts about an ultrasound, or we have to coordinate a visit, I'll feel that same twist in my stomach, like I'm second place in my own marriage. His thumb traced a slow circle on the back of my hand. You're not second. You never were. The mistake was mine, not a ranking, but I understand why it feels that way, and I'm sorry I let it. We sat with that for a long time. No rush to fix it, just the sound of water and night insects and our breathing.
Around 11, we went inside. The cabin was cool. Mark built a small fire in the stove while I turned down the beds. When the flames caught, he came to stand behind me at the window, not touching, just close enough that I could feel his warmth against my back. "Emma," he said softly, "if you need more time, more space, even after this weekend, I'll give it. I don't want you staying because you're afraid of what happens if you leave." I turned to face him. His eyes were serious, unguarded. "I'm not staying out of fear. I'm staying because I still see the man who read to Lily every night she asked, who planted those hydrangeas because I said I missed the ones from my childhood yard, who sat with me in the nursery at 3 a.m. when I couldn't stop crying. That man is still here, and I'm not ready to walk away from him. But I need you to keep showing up as him, not the version who hides, but the one who stays, even when it's messy." He nodded, throat working. "I'm trying, every day." I reached up, touched his cheek, rough with evening stubble. "I know." We didn't kiss, not yet, but we climbed into the narrow double bed together, no pillow barrier, bodies fitting the way they always had. His arm came around me tentatively. I let it stay. My head found the hollow of his shoulder. We didn't speak again. We just lay there listening to the fire pop and the lake breathe outside, letting the quiet stitch something small and fragile back into place. The next morning, Lily woke us by jumping on the mattress, demanding pancakes. We laughed, real laughter, surprised out of us, and stumbled downstairs to make breakfast. The day unfolded slow and golden, canoeing on the lake, Lily in a life jacket, shrieking every time the boat rocked, hiking to a small waterfall, roasting marshmallows until our fingers were sticky. Mark carried Lily on his shoulders when her legs got tired. I walked beside them, hand brushing his elbow now and then. On the drive home Sunday evening, Lily fell asleep in the back seat, cheek pressed to the window. Mark reached over and laced his fingers through mine on the console. This time, I squeezed back. The weekend hadn't erased anything. Sarah's due date was still 2 weeks away. The baby would arrive and our lives would stretch to accommodate him or her. But something had softened. Not the pain exactly, but the edges around it. We had practiced staying in the same space, breathing through the discomfort, choosing each other in small, tested ways. As the highway lights began to flicker on, I looked at Mark's profile, tired, steady, familiar, and felt the first quiet flicker of something that might one day become hope again. Not certainty, not perfection, just the beginning of trust rebuilt one shared weekend at a time.
1 year later, almost to the day, the kitchen smelled of cinnamon and coffee brewing too strong the way Mark still made it when he was thinking hard about something. February light slanted through the window over the sink, catching the steam rising from the pot on the stove where oatmeal simmered for Lily. She was 13 now. Taller, sharper around the edges, voice cracking sometimes when she laughed, and she moved through mornings with the brisk efficiency of someone who already knew the shape of her day. She'd be out the door in 20 minutes for the bus, backpack slung over one shoulder, earbuds in, texting friends about weekend plans. The house felt fuller these days, not just with people, but with the accumulated weight of what we'd carried through the previous spring and summer and into fall. The baby, our son, Elias, had arrived in May, right on schedule. Sarah had texted us a photo from the delivery room, a small, red-faced bundle wrapped in a white hospital blanket, eyes squeezed shut against the bright lights. Mark had stared at the screen for a long minute before showing me. I'd nodded, throat tight, and said, "He's beautiful." It wasn't a lie. We'd gone to the hospital the next day, masks on, standing at the foot of Sarah's bed while she held him. Lily had come too, wide-eyed and quiet, touching one tiny finger with the tip of her own. "He looks like you when you were little," she'd whispered to Mark. He'd swallowed hard and said nothing. Since then, we'd built a careful rhythm around Elias. Sarah lived 40 minutes away in the next county. We met every other Saturday at a neutral park or the Children's Museum downtown. Mark drove. I usually went along. Lily sometimes joined when she wasn't at soccer or with friends. We kept it simple. Playground time, coffee from a cart, small talk about sleep schedules and first smiles. Sarah and I had never become friends, too much history for that, but we'd learned a kind of mutual respect born of necessity. She never overstepped. I never shut her out. The arrangement worked because everyone wanted the same thing, for Elias to grow up knowing he was loved by more than one household. This morning, Mark stood at the counter, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. He handed me mine, without asking, black, 2 sugars, and leaned against the island, watching Lily scroll her phone at the table. "She's taller than me already," he said quietly. "Almost. She'll pass you by summer." He smiled, small and real. The lines around his eyes had deepened in the last year, but so had the steadiness in his gaze. Therapy had continued, individual for both of us, joint once a month now instead of weekly. We didn't go because everything was fixed. We went because we'd learned that maintenance was part of love, like oil changes or gutter cleaning. Some months we talked about Elias, about co-parenting logistics, about how Lily was processing her new role as big sister. Other months we talked about us, small resentments that had crept in, old patterns we caught before they hardened. We didn't always leave lighter, but we always left clearer. Lily looked up. "You guys are being weird again, staring." Mark laughed. "Just admiring how quickly you grew up." She rolled her eyes but smiled. "Whatever, I'm late for the bus." She grabbed her lunch from the fridge, turkey wrap, carrot sticks, the chocolate chip cookie she pretended wasn't her favorite, and hugged us both, quick and fierce. Love you. See you after practice. The door closed behind her. The house settled into its familiar quiet. Mark and I stood there a moment, coffee cooling between our hands. Outside, the bus brakes hissed at the corner, then silence again. He set his mug down. It's been a year since that night on the porch. I nodded. I know. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for you to wake up one day and realize you're still angry or still scared and walk out. I looked at him, really looked at him. The man who'd once carried secrets like stones in his pockets now laid them out on the table without flinching. I still get scared sometimes. When Sarah texts about a doctor's appointment, or when Elias cries in the background of a call, I feel that old twist. But it doesn't stay. It passes, because I know you're not hiding anymore, and I know I'm not either. He stepped closer, tentative. I love you, Emma. Not the easy parts. All of it. The scarred parts, too. I set my mug beside his. I love you back. Same way. We didn't kiss right then. We just stood in the middle of the kitchen, foreheads touching, breathing the same air. The oatmeal bubbled softly on the stove. The clock ticked above the doorway. Ordinary sounds. Sacred ones. Later that afternoon, after Lily's soccer practice and Elias's weekend visit, we drove to the same park we'd used for the first handoff. Sarah was already there, pushing Elias in a baby swing. He was 10 months old now. Chubby cheeks, dark curls like Mark's, a gummy smile that lit up when he saw us. Lily ran ahead, scooping him up carefully, kissing his forehead while he grabbed at her hair. Sarah and I exchanged the usual politities. How's work? How's preschool waitlist? While Mark watched the kids with a quiet pride that still caught in my throat sometimes. When the sun dipped low, we packed up. Sarah buckled Elias into her car seat, waved, and drove away. Lily climbed into the back of ours, already texting about dinner plans with friends. Mark and I lingered by the car a moment, watching her taillights disappear around the bend. She's good with him, I said. She is. She's going to be an amazing big sister. We got in the car. Lily chattered from the back about a new art project, about how Elias had tried to eat a leaf today. Mark drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the console. This time, I covered it with mine, our fingers laced together without fanfare. At home, we made spaghetti, Lily's request, sauce from a jar because it was Tuesday and we were tired. We ate at the table, candles lit because Lily insisted it felt fancy. After dinner, she disappeared upstairs to finish homework. Mark and I cleaned up side by side, shoulders brushing, no hurry. Later, when the house was dark except for the lamp in the living room, we sat on the couch with a blanket across our laps. The TV played something quiet we weren't really watching. Mark's arm came around me. I leaned into him, head on his shoulder. Do you think we're okay? He asked softly. I thought about the year behind us, the nights I'd slept in the guest room again, the mornings we'd barely spoken, the therapy sessions where we'd cried, the small victories. First shared laugh after Elias's birth, first time I let Mark hold my hand in front of Sarah, first night the pillow barrier stayed gone for good. I think we're scarred, I said, and stronger for it. Not perfect, but real. He pressed a kiss to my temple. Real is enough. We stayed like that until the credits roll, until my eyes grew heavy and his breathing slowed. The house settled around us, the creak of floorboards cooling, the faint tick of the clock, the distant sound of a car passing on the street. Familiar sounds. Home sounds. Outside, February stars glittered cold and clear. Inside, we were warm, tangled together on the couch, two people who had walked through fire and come out the other side, not unchanged, but unwilling to let the flames win. Quiet hope had become something steadier, a scarred and stronger bond built one honest day at a time. It wasn't the ending we'd once imagined. It was better, because it was ours.